I'm going to present a case of renal cell carcinoma with bone metastasis, and sixty. This patient was a 61-year-old female, and uh, so as I told you earlier, she was a known case of renal cell carcinoma with metastasis. She also had urinary tract infection. She was anemic. She had osteoporosis, and she also had pulmonary hypertension, and she was malnourished. And her chief complaints were pain in the both lower limbs, weakness, and she also was unable to walk for last 1 month. And she had this generalized weakness with weight loss and loss of appetite for last 1 year. And since she had generalized weakness, and she was not able to walk properly, and she had a fall from stairs, and she fractured her femur, and for which she underwent surgery. This was 1 year back. And her caregiver was son, who was presently unemployable, and now he had shifted to farming. And there was no family history of malignancy. And this slide shows the family tree. Next slide, please. On examination, she had a pulse rate of 68 per minute. Her blood pressure was 90 by 70 millimeter of mercury. She was afebrile, and she had a saturation of 97% on room air. She was pale. There was no icterus, no cyanosis clubbing, and no pedal edema or lymphadenopathy. Her respiratory system examination and cardiovascular, was all right. And her abdomen was soft, non-tender, and there was no distension, no organomegaly. She was conscious, well-oriented, and examination of the lower limbs showed that she had, there was decreased muscle tone in both the lower limbs, and she had a power of 2 by 5. Her knee and ankle reflexes were also diminished, and her bilateral plantars were flexors. She had no bowel or bladder incontinence, and her oral examination was also essentially normal. Her dental hygiene was okay. Next slide, please. She was investigated. She was anemic. She had a hemoglobin of around 6 gram percent, and it was iron deficiency anemia. Her cognition profile was all right. She had an increased ESR 130, and her MRI showed spinal canal narrowing at D4 level, and she had metastatic lesion from L1 to L4, and this was myeloproliferative lesion compression. Her DEXA scan revealed osteoporosis in the lumbar spine and left femur, and her EMG report revealed preganglionic neurogenic involvement of bilateral lumbosacral segments with evidence of ongoing denervation and some evidence of reinnervation. Her PET scan showed the primary lesion to be which was mitotic in the left kidney, and there were mets in the lungs, liver, left retinal gland, abdominal lymph nodes and she had osteolytic destructive lesions, skeletal lesions. The liver biopsy again revealed metastatic adenocarcinoma, and during the treatment, she had also developed fever, and all her routine investigations were repeated, and she showed elevated serum procalcitonin. Next slide, please. So this patient was managed on the general principles of integrated multidisciplinary approach, which consists of anti-neoplastic treatment, which could be chemotherapy, endocrine therapy, targeted therapy, like as we did in our case, targeted therapy. She was on tablet Presopenib 200 milligram twice daily, which is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, and she was on biphosphonate, the zoledronic acid, 3 milligram intravenously once a month was given. And we also gave her other supportive interventions such as counseling and analgesics. We gave her paracetamol 650 milligram as and when required, especially when she was febrile. And she was on tramadol, which has paracetamol and tramadol 37, that Ultraset, which has paracetamol and tramadol. And then she was put on enoxaparin, 0.4 ml subcutaneous once daily. And she was on, in view of her pain, pain, she was put on gabapentin and methylcobalamin. And she was put on vitamin D, calcium, because um, it is important that when these patients are put on biphosphonates, it is important that you assess their vitamin D and calcium levels. These are corrected before you start the treatment, and also it is an ongoing thing. So during therapy also you have to keep on monitoring these levels, and vitamin D and calcium should be supplemented. Since she was anemic, iron deficiency anemia, she was also put on ferrous ascorbate, and she was given dietary protein powder to take care of her malnutrition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vimla. We will discuss it later. First, we will allow Dr. Mithilesh to present.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Our today's topic, it's an important topic. The number of patients we are getting for this. I will just turn the topic in place of mechanism and magnitude. First, to make it interesting, we'll see the magnitude. So, overall data, what we have collected, it's not from India that much, but we all know the morbidity caused by this bone pain, the severity of pain, the quality of life, the deficit because of spinal cord compression. These all are preventive to a much extent, treatable to a much extent. Bone, one of the most frequent site of metastasis, other than lung and liver. And
sorry, Dr.
may I have my slides, please?
We have
May
some
I
difficulty hearing
Can
you.
you show the slides? Can you show the slides, and you also speak loudly? Dr. Cynthia, this is what you are saying?
Yes, we can't hear Dr. Mithilesh very clearly.
Okay.
Can you
Okay,
hold
ma'am.
the
I
mic
will.
next to your mouth?
Yeah, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Yeah. So, next slide, please. Next. So, these data are taken from Oncology Review of 2017 and also from Cancer Registry, Indian Journal of Cancer. Though these the journals were published, these articles were published in late 2015 and 16, but the data they collected, that is of 2005 and before. So recent, I have
I think
searched
we
at so
still
many
can't
places.
hear you very clearly, though.
Still, you,
yeah,
still
I think
can't
your
hear you. Yeah.
internet is lagging.
We can't hear you, Mithilesh.
is it audible now, ma'am?
हाँ,
Yeah.
अब ठीक है, अब ठीक है. इतना ही
better,
जोर से
better.
बोलो, और जहाँ आप खड़े हो वहीं खड़े खड़े बोलो, बिल्कुल वहीं से.
Okay, ma'am.
Don't
So
move.
the overall incidence of bone metastasis is not known, but according to Indian Journal of Oncology, the data till 2010, it shows that the bone metastasis must be around 23.8%. The relative incidence which we have taken, most of the bone metastasis is from breast and prostate, which is around 65 to 75%. Lung being the next one, malignant melanoma causing 14 to 45% of bone metastasis. But apart from prostate and breast cancer, the most of the drugs which we have studied in detail are of malignant melanoma. Next slide, please. So the median survival, previously we were taught the textbook, what it says that once a patient comes with bone metastasis, it's a bad luck that most of these bone metastasis we come to know after patient complains with the bone pain. It is to the multiple level, and the total survival, the median survival, once faced with bone metastasis is something in months. But with the newer drugs, the chemotherapy, the radiotherapy, radiofrequency ablation, these survival have increased. Again, I will repeat, these data are 15 years back. Right now, the situation must be better. And why we are discussing this survival? Because it is one to prognosticate. Second one is these patients will come for a longer time for treatment of their bone pain. Next slide, please. Coming to mechanism of metastasis. We will cover both the mechanism of metastasis and the mechanism of bone pain simultaneously, because both the mechanism are almost similar. Can I come to this slide later on? Firstly, to the next slide, please. Yes. So once this primary tumor gets detached because of the matrix metalloproteins generated by this tumor, this metastasis has to come in the systemic circulation. Once it is in systemic circulation, it is alien to the systemic circulation, and it will be getting programmed cell death if it will not survive there. So what it does, it secretes some endothelins, and these sorry, firstly they once they are in systemic circulation, to survive the systemic circulation, they will.
Your voice is breaking, Mithilesh.
Again, ma'am.
Yeah. Your internet is not. Hello. So what should we do?
Am I audible, ma'am?
हाँ अभी ठीक है.
Okay, so once in this systemic circulation, these tumor cells secrete some tyrosine kinase and upregulation of CD cells, which we count for their diagnosis. These cells help them survive in the systemic circulation. And once they get attached to bone, like in breast cancer, they come to the systemic circulation through the, because we know the azygous vein and this venous circulation of Batson. So the breast cancer metastasis is mainly to the thoracic vertebra, while and prostate we see because of the pelvic plexus of which they go to lumbosacral spine. Once in bone, they want to get attached to there. So for that, they secrete some endothelin. These endothelin will help in stimulation and proliferation of osteoblasts. Osteoblasts will lead to some new bone formation. These new bone formation are there, but these bones which are newly formed, they are prone for fractures, as they don't have that consistency as a normal bone. Apart from this osteoblast stimulation, they also secrete some receptor activated of nuclear factor kappa B lesion. These lesions are they mature and signal the osteoclast. Once this osteoclasts are activated, they attach to the neurons. The neurons will generate some macrophages. The macrophages will lead to this secretions of some pro-inflammatory materials and prostaglandins. So these prostaglandins and pro-inflammatory markers are responsible for the bony pain. Last slide, please. Second last slide, please. So for three things which are mainly important for this metastasis is vascular adhesion, extravasation, microenvironmental support, and epithelial mesenchymal transition, which is normally seen only in embryological phase. But these tumors secretes some substance, and they can convert to mesenchymal cells to survive in the systemic circulation. The pain of bony metastasis can be because of inflammation, periosteal irritation, or because of the mechanical pressure over the neurons, periosteal nerve fibers. I think rest we can discuss on the case basis as it goes. This is the basic mechanism how metastasis happen and why the reason of pain. We know this because on the treatment aspect, this bisphosphonate or denosumab, which place it acts and how we are going to treat. So this is the basic mechanism, and I will be giving over to Sushma ma'am. Once we will discuss the case, we'll go in the further detail. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mithilesh. So there, can you put on the slides of Dr. Bimla and the last slide of Dr. Bimla? The last presentation of Dr. Bimla and the last slide.
This is
Okay,
the slide you are
so
talking
this is
about?
the last slide. Yeah, this
Okay.
is the last slide. So, okay, thank you very much. So, Dr. Bimla, I think you have covered everything in this case. Now we will hear from our faculty members that in a patient, can you summarize, Dr. Bimla? Maybe people must have joined little late. In short, the case, total case, that renal cell carcinoma and what. So, Dr. Bimla, can you summarize the case in two
Yes, she
lines,
was
please?
yes, 62-year-old lady, and she was a known case of renal cell carcinoma, and she had metastasis in the liver, kidney, renal glands, and she had um, skeletal involvement also. She had metastasis in the spine, the lumbar spine, as well as in the thoracic spine. So that was a history.
And she had a history of fall, and for that she has been operated before.
Yes, she had
And
weakness of the lower limbs, and presently she was unable to walk on her own. She was using crutches.
yeah, she was having lower limb weakness. Okay, so you have started. You have given this treatment. So one by one, I think we can ask our faculty that how we should go about this patient as far as the treatment is concerned, and then we will come back fast on the discussion of zoledronic acid and denosumab. Okay, so I'll go one by one with the upar se who I can see Naveen first. Naveen, maybe you can start the treatment part. Whether this the treatment which Dr. Bimla has asked, is it fine, or we should approach it in another way?
Thank you, madam. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just looking at the big list of medications that are there. See, if our target is to manage the bone pain, I see a lot of medications here, but I think the first thing that what we should do is that bone pains are opioid semi-refractory, and they respond well to non-steroidal and steroidal analgesics. So here, if we look at the prescription, there is paracetamol and tramadol, which is given the twice a day. I don't know why, because the half-life of tramadol is not 12 hours. So clearly that may not help the patient at all. So if there is no contraindication, and if it's an acute bone pain, I would be very inclined to use some dexamethasone. We could give paracetamol round the clock 4 times a day, up to 4 grams per day. And also I would give calcitonin, because even when we give zoledronic, it takes 48 to 72 hours for its analgesic action to take place. So calcitonin works within 6 hours. So maybe up to 600 international units per day subcutaneously. And although they say that gabapentinoids have some role in bone pain, that there is no clear evidence for bone pain mechanism of gabapentin. I'm not sure how alpha calcidol or calcitriol probably will help in this patient. So using the analgesic step ladder and using clear-cut bone pain adjuvants would definitely help. This is my thought process.
Thank you, Naveen. So I think it's a big list of medication, and still, how much pain was relieved, Dr. Bimla, in this patient? Whether she was completely relieved with pain?
Yes, she was more or less comfortable. We made a telephone inquiry, and presently she was comfortable.
She was completely relieved, and she was moving around, and there was no problem. Huh?
She was more than 80% paid relief.
So, I think next I want to go to the what is the role of Mayank? What is the role of any other intervention we can plan in this patient? Is there any role?
For this particular patient, ma'am, I don't think there is role of any intervention, because first of all, we have to optimize the pharmacological management, and secondly, the patient had bilateral lower limb pain, query malignant spinal cord compression, or so I don't think any role of intervention at this point of time until we have optimized the pharmacological management. And anyway, she had 80% relief with this pain with these medications.
So I think the best. Thank you, Mayank. So as Naveen said, that main role is of paracetamol, NSAIDs, dexamethasone, and there is hardly any role of tramadol, and because most of the time there is it is not responsive to tramadol and morphine, this kind of pain. But because of other pain, mixed pain, we have to give this medication. Priya, do you think that any type of counseling will help in short, if you can say, because we have to jump on the discussion of bisphosphonate?
Yeah, I think, madam, if patient understand why the pain is coming and what movement restrictions and like how they need to be managing it non-pharmacologically, it would certainly help.
It will certainly help. So this is Vidya. How will you differently, or you will manage this patient the same way as everybody is planning to manage?
Same way, madam, paracetamol and dexamethasone. And maybe after we taper the dexamethasone, we would put them on an NSAID. So I usually don't give NSAID and dexamethasone together. And also counseling the patient about falls and supportive, in the bathroom and anything like that. For any of the patients with bone pains, we tell them about surfaces, the non-pharmacological part. They don't skid and they don't fall, because sudden relief of pain they can even try to start walking. So we always tell them those cautionary measures. That's
Thank you,
all.
Vidya. Thank you. Naveen, Dr. Kunal is asking that can you give more details about the therapy of calcitonin? So even I wanted to ask you, because although this topic is mainly on bisphosphonate, but maybe if you can just give few minutes on calcitonin therapy in this patient.
So calcitonin traditionally has action on the osteoclastic cell, and but there are multiple mechanisms by which calcitonin acts, and we have a traditional understanding of our bone pain. Always we think of the periosteal nerve fiber stimulation, which causes the bone pain. But now there are so much evidence that is coming. Even when there is no radiological evidence of bone pain, still patients could experience bone pain because of the activation of the fibers along the what we call the Harvesian canal. That's the inner aspect. So calcitonin has one direct action on the osteoclastic cell. Traditionally, it is used mainly for hypercalcemia, but it has a lot of action on the peripheral nerve endings, and that's one of the reason what they've attributed for the immediate action of calcitonin. And we time and again we have used calcitonin. People use it both nasally and subcutaneously. Like in conditions like osteoporosis pain, they use mainly it as a nasal preparation. But in cancer setting, we have had very good results with managing it, giving subcutaneously. And again, the dose depends. Like sometimes it we with a small dose like 100 international units 8th hourly is sufficient, and sometimes we may have to go up to 900 international units per day, that is 300 international units 8th hourly. And the exact it has got many different mechanisms. One is on the nerve fibers, one is directly on the osteoclastic cell, and also it acts on certain sodium channel subtypes. I'm not sure about the receptor. There is one receptor which I can remember called as ankyrin 1 receptor. uh, we may have to read about that offhand. I may not remember all the receptor, but it has a very broad multiple actions that is there.
So Naveen, do you use this routinely, or you have a certain indication to start calcitonin?
My first trend always used to use a combination of paracetamol and dexamethasone for pain management. And we always check for calcium also. And if the dexamethasone and paracetamol is not adequately relieving pain, and also weak opioids slash strong opioids also has got no action, and then we go, even when the calcium is normal, we start with 3 days of calcitonin, 200 international units, 8th hourly for 3 days. Because at the end of third day, there will be tachyphylaxis. That means it no more will start working. But that's a good time to start both zoledronic acid and calcitonin together. So by the end of the third day, the calcitonin effect would wear off and the zoledronic will start working.
Okay, thank you. So, Kunal, this Mayank has given one reference. I think you can go ahead with this, and you can go and in detail this reference, the calcitonin for metastatic bone pain, and you can read it. It's a Cochrane database. Okay.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, I shared it's a very outdated Cochrane review. It's a 2003 Cochrane review. So I'm sure there are a lot of other studies which have come up. So as Naveen sir has said, a lot of studies are coming up that it's effective. So it's a very outdated one which I shared. It's a 2003. By mistake, I shared the 2003 Cochrane review.
Okay, okay, no problem. One more. I don't know who is Galaxy Tab S2 is asking how much dexamethasone we should use. Who will answer this? How much dexamethasone? Vidya? Okay, sorry, Naveen, go ahead.
No, we usually give up to 12 milligrams per day in acute bone pain crisis. Yeah.
12 milligram per day. Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Anupama, this type of case you must be seeing day and day night, means every day you must be getting these type of patients. And do you think everything they have covered, or something else you want to do?
Yes, ma'am. That was me asking how much dexamethasone was my tab. So we start these patients on paracetamol with zoledronic acid, and of course, depending upon the severity of the pain, I used to add tramadol till now. Maybe I will start decreasing my use of tramadol and increasing steroids. I mean, using dexamethasone and other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. But the other thing is, depending upon the site, whether if it's a single site and if it is amenable, then immediate palliative RT is something that we offer. Of course, if it is extensive skeletal metastasis, then we cannot give RT in all the sites.
Yes, Dr. Anupama, I think Dr. Naveen is not, it's like most of the time in cancer patient, it is not only bone pain. There are many other pains also. So it is not hard and fast that we will not start tramadol or morphine. but we will have to see that if it is only pure bone, single bone metastasis, definitely there will be no role of tramadol. But definitely there will be role of the paracetamol or NSAIDs and dexamethasone. And dexamethasone, again, Dr. Naveen has said 12 milligram, but Naveen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it is not necessary that 12 milligram, 8 milligram or 6 milligram. If patient is not getting relieved, we have to reduce it. But definitely we should give a good trial of dexamethasone. Naveen, is it what I'm saying
Yes,
is right?
yes, madam. I agree with you. And it's not that it's not like other opioids where we escalate dose, but usually in an acute bone pain crisis, this is what has been my practice. I may be wrong. Maybe a smaller dose or a much larger dose is needed, but
Because there is no fixed dose which
yes,
will
yeah.
relieve the pain and in dexamethasone, but definitely we should, in all intractable bony pain, if paracetamol or NSAIDs is not acting, and if you are thinking that it is just a single bony metastasis, it is purely a bony metastatic pain, I think we should give a trial of dexamethasone, definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
So before we go to again bisphosphonate, I will just ask Dr. Cynthia, is there anything to add in this patient with all the discussion which we have discussed till now?
Yes. Yes, I'm glad that Dr. Naveen clarified that we go straight to calcitonin only in a pain crisis and acute pain. I don't know that in this particular patient that she presented in pain crisis, it sounded a much more indolent sort of background pain that she had. What I was not clear was when the renal cell carcinoma was diagnosed, presumably a long time ago, but the bone metastases were just recently discovered. Is that right, Dr. Bimla?
Yeah, there's 1 year history of,
1 year
weakness.
history. When she broke her hip,
1 year
they
history.
found that she had a renal cell carcinoma.
Yes.
Now, and did she have any of this treatment, which is on the left-hand side of your slide, any of the anti-neoplastic treatment during that time?
Yes, she has had. So yes.
All of them?
Yes.
I see. And then currently, is she on any of them?
No, currently she's on this targeted therapy, pazopanib, 200 milligram twice daily.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Currently she's on pazopanib.
Pazopanib, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. I must say that for myself, I very rarely use calcitonin for bone pain. I would usually go through the WHO ladder. But taking the point that most of us are a little bit hesitant to use either dexamethasone or NSAID, and I agree with Dr. Vidya that we wouldn't use it together.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So we will start with our actual presentation, and I will come back to Seema and Dr. Seema and Hanife. Seema, you will have to say 2 or 3 bullet points of counseling, that what exactly they should have a difficult time, the Dr. Bimla and Mithilesh, and Sister Hanife, you will have to say nursing needs. So we will start our presentation first. If nurses from Gangaram Hospital are there, they can also add at the end of this thing. So first we should how to go. Yeah, okay. So this will go fast, huh? So whatever I have prepared in the first, I will finish in 15 minutes, and then we will again come back to the discussion. So this already Dr. Mithilesh has said that 70% of bone metastasis is basically from prostate and breast cancer. And definitely bone metastasis, we know it's the third most common, and rest of the third most place where malignant cell get metastasized after liver and lung. And other cancers which causes bone metastasis are thyroid, lung, multiple myeloma, renal cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Bone metastasis, this is very important that we should know how to recognize sclerotic lesion, lytic lesion, and mixed lesion. In a sclerotic lesion, most common cancer in which we will find lytic lesion are multiple myeloma, renal cell carcinoma, melanoma. non-small cell lung cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and thyroid. And most common sclerotic lesion we will find in a patient if patient is having bone pain and patient is having carcinoma, prostate and small cell lung cancer or Hodgkin's lymphoma or medulloblastoma. And if you will see that because it is not necessary that all patients should go for MRI, even with lytic lesion and sclerotic lesion, we can easily say that this patient is having bone metastasis, and it is really not necessary to go for PET scan if we know how to recognize through X-ray. And mixed type of lesion you will find in breast carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. So this we have already, Dr. Mithlesh has said that possible local mechanism why bone pain is there in these patients. Now this is a chart of summary chart of all the treatment which we have discussed. Analgesic drugs definitely has a big role, that is mainly paracetamol and NSAIDs. And I've divided into three parts: that uncomplicated bone mets, complicated bone metastasis, and skeletal related events. I'll come back to the skeletal related events in the next few slides. So analgesic drugs has role in all three, whether it is it is just a small single lesion, then also we will need denosumab and bisphosphonate we will discuss in subsequent slides. But you can see that corticosteroids has a role in everywhere except skeletal related events, like that will also have a role, but major roles is in complicated bone metastasis. And you can see that 8 to 16 milligram per day, which Dr. Naveen has already said. Gabapentin and pregabalin, they have no evidence to use all these, so don't use all these steps. Definitely, as Dr. Anupama says, that there is a good role of radiotherapy, whether it is external beam radiotherapy or high fractionated radiotherapy, whatever radiotherapist will decide, there is a role of radiotherapy, mainly in uncomplicated bone metastasis and complicated bone metastasis. Strontium, samarium, and all these radionucleotides, definitely people use it, but this like guideline says that if patient is having diffuse pain poorly controlled by pharmacotherapy, there is a plus minus role. But definitely what I have my experience, personal experience, I have not have any series of patients, but whenever I have sent patients from strontium and samarium, they come back with a lot of complications rather than any relief. So I have stopped sending patients over there. Bone surgery definitely has a role if patient is having good play. If we can do vertebroplasty, single bony lesion, kyphoplasty. Analgesics.
Has she hung? What happened?
Hi, Dr. Shushma, are you there?
We can't hear you, Dr. Shushma.
Dr. Shushma, you are muted.
Yeah, okay. Now
just now we lost connection with you for a few
yeah,
minutes
we
or
have
so.
lost connection. I don't know why I lost connection. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So what we were talking about bone surgery, definitely if complicated, like if a patient is having a person is having fractured spine and something in selected group of patient, definitely it has a role. Mithlesh has also said minimal invasive thermal ablation. This definitely has a role. Very small lesions in bony metastasis, RFA we have done at least at 10 patients, and what we have found that it definitely gives a good counseling to us and the patient, that we have not given medication, and sometimes it help and sometimes it does not help. Now we have to define what are the skeletal related events, because I have not covered the last column of the table. So basically, related events, there is no definite definition, and we should know that what exactly it is, so that we can start with bisphosphonate and denosumab in time. All these things, wherever the patient is having some kind of anything which is affecting the bone, maybe it is pain, fracture, or impaired mobility because of the pain, spinal cord compression, or hypercalcemia. So in some group of patients, even hypercalcemia they have included, although it's again a question mark whether we should include hypercalcemia in skeletal related events. But in one trial we have found that hypercalcemia also they have included in skeletal. So all these are skeletal related events, and these are the bisphosphonate first generation, second generation, and third generation. Most of the time people use third generation bisphosphonate. Authorized indication of using bisphosphonate is in basically in hypercalcemia, pain associated with osteolytic bone metastasis, osteoporosis, and Paget's disease. Prophylactic to reduce skeletal related events, mostly in means like it is used uh, basically prophylactically in myeloma and carcinoma breast patients. Uh, but there are consensus that any patient with prognosis more than 4 to 6 months, we should use bisphosphonate. Otherwise, basically bisphosphonates are means like is recommended mainly for myeloma and carcinoma breast patients to reduce before getting complicated, and if there is any bony metastasis, to reduce bony metastasis related any event to happen, we people should start using bisphosphonate. Mechanism, I think we will not go into the detail, otherwise we will not be able to discuss other things. The dosing is very simple. We have to see the creatinine clearance, and creatinine clearance, I think everybody in this group, they know how to calculate creatinine clearance, but I have given this formula. So with this formula, I think everything is available with us, all these values, and we can calculate creatinine clearance. And this is the doses for zoledronic acid basically. If patient is having creatinine clearance more than 60, we have to give 4 milligram, and so on and so forth. But prerequisite is that person should have adequate hydration. There should be we should have a good assessment of creatinine clearance. Person should have good oral hygiene and dental examination. So before starting, we will send patient for dental examination. We will come back to the next slide that why we want dental examination. This is recommended to administer with medication intravenously over at least 15 minutes. We will give. We will also recommend that patient should take vitamin D and supplemental calcium, because all these medication may cause hypocalcemia. These are the adverse effects with these basically these are the adverse effects: back pain, nausea, fatigue, arthralgia, fever-like and flu-like symptoms. But definitely the major adverse effects is osteonecrosis of jaw. That's why we ask that patient should go and get their dental examination. Means there should not be any caries, there should not be any infection, there should not be any loose teeth, there should not be unhygienic oral cavity. So all these things we want to make it sure that patient has good oral hygiene. So because it is a major side effects of denosumab as well as zoledronic acid, more with denosumab. These are the incidences of osteonecrosis, that although it is not very high, but if it happens, it is really painful for the patient. So I have seen many at least 50-20 patients with osteonecrosis, and it is so painful that you just cannot do anything for these patients. You keep on giving antibiotics. If you are going to do debridement of the oral cavity, then patient will have further pain and unnecessary. They will keep coming for dressings, and ultimately they never get pain relief, and ultimately it keeps on getting complicated. So it is best that person should not develop this, and we should prevent it by giving good oral hygiene, good oral dental examination before starting bisphosphonate therapy. These are the caution. Basically, cautions is related that any drug which will cause hypocalcemia and hypomagnesemia, we should avoid, and mainly like aminoglycosides. Patient with loop diuretics, it can cause hypocalcemia and dehydration. Patient, definitely we should be very cautious if your patient is on nephrotoxic drugs, and if patient is on thalidomide, we have to be very cautious because it has a renal effect on renal impairment. Denosumab is again an osteoclast inhibitor. It is human monoclonal antibody. The mechanism of action is again inhibiting the receptors activator of nuclear factor kappa ligand, rank ligands. Its doses are 120 milligrams subcutaneous every 4 weeks, and after and 12 weeks. Indication is to basically to prevent again skeletal hereditary events mainly in breast cancer and solid tumors. But it also has been indicated or advised where whom bisphosphonates are contraindicated or poorly tolerated, especially in prevention of osteoporotic fragility fracture in postmenopausal women and treatment of bone loss in men with prostate cancer receiving androgen deprivation therapy. Also, it has been used for treating refractory hypercalcemia of malignancy. This is a flow chart. I will leave this flow chart, but everything is very important, but I don't want to go into this. I want to discuss other things in this, but this flow chart will clearly says that when to use denosumab and when to use zoledronic acid in patients with breast cancer and prostate cancer, how much to use and how long to use. So all these things have been given in the flow chart. You can go through this flow chart, and this is everything is you will find it. These are the references where role of bone modifying agent in basically multiple myeloma. Now we will come back to the come to the very important point, that zoledronic acid and denosumab. We keep on struggling that which drug is going to be very useful. So we will have a table to see that the differences and similarities in denosumab and bisphosphonate. So osteonecrosis, I told you that this is a very dreaded complication and patient really suffers a lot if it happens. But both the drugs, they are going to cause osteonecrosis, but it is more with denosumab. Hypocalcemia, both the drugs is going to cause, so you have to supplement calcium and you have to be very careful. Nephrotoxicity mainly is with bisphosphonate. Renal elimination need for dose adjustment and renal in cases of renal impairment. Definitely, in cases of bisphosphonate, we have to be very careful. Flu-like symptoms again with the bisphosphonate. Bone, joint, and muscle pain will be with the bisphosphonate. And this is very important, that cost is an important factor, and you can see the cost of a patient per year. If we will offer zoledronic acid to a patient, it will cost 14,000 per year, but if we will offer denosumab to a patient, per year cost will be 1,04,000. So there is a huge difference. So we have to consider this important factor also. So if there is no problem in renal creatinine clearance is normal, kidneys are functioning normal, I think the person can it's like effect is going to be equal, and person can go and we can offer zoledronic acid also. So this is what I wanted to say. If anything, Dr. Anupama and Dr. Kunal, you want to add in this, because this is basically medicine which medical oncologist most of the time uses this. So Dr. Kunal, what is your routine practice of using these two? Dr. Kunal?
I think everything has been covered. So we more commonly use zoledronic acid, and main reason not to use denosumab is the cost. But only in patients where there is renal failure, or occasionally if the patients are intolerant to zoledronic acid, which does not happen very often, then we use denosumab.
Okay. Anupama, is there any preference of in these two drugs?
Yes, ma'am. Cost is a huge factor. So we have very few patients who are on denosumab. Most of these are those who have already developed osteonecrosis, or they have rising creatinine, but we have to give them some agent for bone pain and prevent bone demineralization. So I would say for 100 with zoledronic acid, we have 1 on denosumab. That thing. The other thing is many times we have to start this in a semi-emergency situation where patients come with pain. So we are not really able to send everybody for dental examination and wait for any dental procedure to get done. So the number of patients whom we send for dental clearance before starting zoledronic acid is, I'm sorry to say, but it's not very high. Maybe we should be more vigilant, and if we can hold on the zoledronic acid for a week, get their dental clearance done. But many times we just have to start it when they come with severe, a lot of lesions, and we don't get it done. Maybe we can improve on that.
No, Dr. Nupama, I think you are absolutely right. Even I don't like sending patient unnecessary when patient is in pain and so much troubled in sending to dental center. And dental center people, they take their own time because they don't understand the gravity of situation. I think we can also judge that if there is if some kind of infection is there, and we can ask patient to open their mouth if there are caries, loose teeth, and if there is a clear-cut infection, we can send them for them. If there is no problem, I think there is hardly any problem in starting. What do you think that Vidya, Naveen, this is it it's a right decision? Even I don't like sending unnecessary patient to dental center when patient is in pain.
Yeah, in my routine practice, I do not do, madam, unless there is clear-cut infection or not routinely. We don't send to dental.
Yes. But this is just a prophylaxis that patient. But the ultimate aim is that oral hygiene should be clear, good. That's all. So oral hygiene, we can also see oral hygiene. So is there any comment about the bisphosphonate and denosumab from anyone else? Extra comment? Then we will come back to the patient again, and we want to cover 2 or more things.
Just 2 things. Apart from our target in these patients, one is pain relief. Second is progression of pain relief or recurrence or breakthrough pain. And third is, as you said correctly, the skeletal related events. This zoledronic acid not only helping us in pain relief, but the newer whatever articles we have, it does help in to stop the further metastasis. It causes recalcification of already lysed bone. So it has a multiple role apart from just a painkiller drug. So I think if Dr. Naveen or you can form some SOP of starting it early, though most of the oncosurgeons are doing, but when we go through the treatment protocol, unless until patient present with pain, we don't start it. Now the recommendations are there that we start it early.
I think breast and prostate cancer, I think we should start as soon as patient is getting bone metastasis, and to prevent basically it's to prevent the skeletal related events.
Sure.
And how long? There is no clear-cut consensus that how long we can continue. There is
no life expectation itself is like in months, below 2 years and all. And I
it's
think
not always in prostate cancer people survive for 2-3 years. It's not always that. Even in bone, I have seen cancer breast patient in these days, they survive long time. So now, as Mithilesh says, third point is quality of life. So quality of life, we have to have a good nursing team, and we have to have a good counseling skill. So Seema will tell us that what are the 2 bullet important points in counseling, and then Hanife or Nilima will tell about the nursing care of this patient. I know this is not our topic, but we have to cover this topic also. So first, I think who is coming? Seema?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
So coming to this, when we talk about extensive skeletal meds, I was just 3 things that we would look at. One is giving good analgesia, control of pain. But then with this extent of skeletal metastasis, sometimes complete control of pain may not be possible, especially when it is bone pain. So I think realigning expectation of the patient about how much pain control we can achieve and giving a clear, realistic picture of the breakthrough pains coming in or incident pain coming in is extremely important to incorporate along with treating for the pain, along with giving the pain medication. The second thing I would probably look at here is the skeletal related events. Though we are giving, there are chances when there is a bone metastasis, other skeletal related events would be there. So counseling the patient about functionality, about the risk of pathological fracture is extremely important. And the third is stabilization of the structure, the bone. And that would involve losing some of the normal or altering some of the normal day-to-day activities for the patient. So I think that in addition to giving control of the pain, giving medications to prevent skeletal related events, it's also important to concentrate on these three aspects when we in counseling, when we talk to them.
Thank you, Seema. Very, very important points. Very important. Thank you. So, Hanife, before this, Kunal has given very important, which I think I wanted to say, and I forgot this, that there are evidence of zoledronic acid every 3 months instead of 1 month and with the equal effect. I think it's absolutely right. In these days, people start monthly and then they quickly go to the 3 monthly. I think the equally similar effect of both the monthly and 3 monthly. Sister Hanife, yes, please.
Well, along with the lines of what Dr. Seema said, the activities, and I think in this time, it is very important to also know what are patients' priorities in terms of activity. Not the essential activities, but in general, so that those can have priority, so that the quality of life is improved with every chance we get. This is important because we have to know what is important to him or her. The second thing is when we position the patient, the alignment is essential. When we turn the patient, when we move the patient, and also we have to support all the limbs with the palm of one hand, and while we support and turn with the other hand, and we need to ask for help. This is really, really essential. And we need to teach that to the family. And also the mouth care, as you said, Dr. Sushma, we need to do this every single day. This is, the nurses should put a light in the mouth and check them out, and nursing care should be done to the mouth. It's not enough, at least at the hospital, to tell the family to do this. And the same thing with intake and output maintenance. Asking the family at this point is not good enough. So the nurses have to be really on the ball. And also one other thing is that they would get insomnia sometimes, from what I remember. There is also a little bit of an irritation. And these are some of the side effects that we need to be more aware of. And of course, we need to monitor ourselves as nurses, the kidney function test and everything as well, so that we are on top of it. That's all.
Absolutely right, Hanife. I think this is insomnia and irritability is also a very important side effect in these patients. Definitely, it's absolutely right. And this is also very important that every day, it is not before starting bisphosphonate therapy, it is every day oral
yes.
required. It is definitely.
Yes.
You have picked
Yes.
up the point. Our mistakes you have picked up. We
No
were talking.
problem.
Okay. So thank you very much. I think we have finished time. And Dr. Cynthia, you want to say last word about the discussion overall, and then we will have a photograph.
I think we've had a very comprehensive discussion today, from sort of very basic pain management approaches to the very complicated and some very expensive, like the radium and strontium and so on, modes of pain management. But I think we need to keep the overall picture in hand. And I'm very glad that you ended up with Dr. Seema and Hanife talking about being sensible, being patient-centered, and adjusting to the patient's own goals. So thank you very much. Yes. Shall we take a photograph?
you.
It was important. It was important because otherwise, most of the time with oncologists, people get hooked up by all the medication and all the list of. I have seen that with bone pain patients, they come with so many medication, calcium, and then I don't know what so many things this thing. But definitely nobody makes them understand that what is happening to them. Nobody take care of the oral hygiene is so important. These are the important things which we have to teach them. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.